our data that matters. The people who are collecting the data are getting funding, lots and lots of dollars to be able to extract this information and then use them to their benefit.
I think of it as, how would I want my story told? And I would want to be a part of it. And I'm not Native, right? So what does that mean for a Native community? The last thing I want to do is tell your story for you. So how do we talk about shifting the power so that you hold your story, you hold your data, right? That's what data is it tells a story.
Hello, my kako, and welcome to our 4th episode of KALO HCC's KOKO podcast here at the Aloha Resource and Community Center. Today, we are so excited to have Lexie Jackson join us. She's one of our longtime members of KALO. She's been a part of our community here in Oregon for umpteen years. She can share about her umpteen years here and all of that fun stuff. Lexie has also been a pillar really for our community as well here in the Pacific Northwest, helping us elevate our voices for the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander people. So we're really excited to have her join us today, and I will hand it over to Lexie so she can introduce herself, tell you a little bit where she's from, and why she loves us so much.
I don't know anymore. No, I'm kidding. Thanks, Lay. So yeah, my name is Lexie. I'm born and raised in Oʻahu, and lived in Oʻahu until I turned 18 and left to go to college because that was always the thing my parents said. After you go to high school, you go to college. And I guess now is the time to talk about how you're representing my alma mater. Go Buff and Blue. Thank you for dressing in my school colors. I appreciate it. How does it feel?
Beautiful. Because side note, this is my favorite colors.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, with a hint of brown. This is my color palette. That's why we're friends.
Apparently. And so, yeah, I went to college in Texas, which was a total culture shock. Growing up in Oʻahu, like all I wanted to do was go on my first road trip, experience, what it's like to live on the continent, and try new things. And Texas was totally different. I think people made fun of me for how I talked, just little things, whether it was slippers or anything small that is like a Hawaiiism or pidgin or anything like that. And then I would say I was really disconnected from culture. I lived on the continent, many different places for a little while. A longer while. I just graduated high school a couple years ago, right?
Yes.
Both of us?
Yes.
And so it wasn't until I came back to the Pacific Northwest and had just finished my Ph.D. and was doing some work with Ka'imi Sinclair, Dr. Ka'imi, who was a mentor of mine. And she said, "Hey, are you familiar with the Hawaiian Civic Club?" So I was like, "No, I have no idea. What is that?" And so started looking into Hawaiian Civic Clubs and saw all the amazing work that KALO is doing. And that was really an opportunity for reconnection of culture. And you've heard me say this many times I thought when I left Hawaii, that was like the end of participating in anything related to Hawaii or Hawaii culture. And now having this great opportunity through KALO to learn more about Hawaiian culture, to learn more about practices and work with the community has been such a great opportunity.
Texas.
Yeah.
Wow. What was it like? I mean, when you went to Texas, was there a Pacific Islander presence there in Texas at all?
I knew one person from my high school that we went to college together. Wow. No, not really. And I mean, I'm not Pacific Islander either, right? So, or Native Hawaiian. And so it was very much assimilating into Texas culture,
Yeah.
right? Like country music, going to the pool, floating the river, those kinds of things, right? You had to make that transition as quickly as possible to not, I mean, I'm not a cool person. I was always kind of a nerd anyway. But that was definitely, you know, the first couple of years of living in Texas is blending in and learning about what it's like to live on the continent. One of the kind of funny stories, I guess, is, you know, they didn't have the right kind of rice. So I definitely brought rice to Texas in my suitcase, and the bag exploded in my suitcase.
Oh my
Like, or
gosh.
it didn't explode. That's not the right word. It broke. And rice got all in my suitcase, you know, you can imagine.
Yeah.
I still have that suitcase and it still has rice. Like I cannot get all the rice out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's there.
Rice, you can never.
Yeah.
Once rice, even like when it just falls on the ground, it's like forever. And it's
Yeah.
the uncooked rice
Yes.
that you can never get, you know.
All the pieces. But yeah, it's little things. Like there was no food that was like there's no Hawaiian food of any kind in Texas. So
That's so interesting because over the last couple of years, there is a Hawaiian Civic, well, there's a group of Hawaiians who are trying to stand up a Hawaiian Civic Club out there in Texas. And it's interesting because I think Texas is now ranked in the top 10 for where Native Hawaiians are living now. And my classmate now lives in Texas, and they have a Hawaiian Civic Club. They're trying to start a Hawaiian Civic Club. They have a halal, so that's really interesting. Um, that that change. I always wonder. I always ask her like, how much Hawaiians you get over there? There's tons, but no resources.
yeah.
Like there's nothing. Like if you're trying to have some kind of culture, there's nothing available. You gotta literally create it yourself, and that's kind of why Hawaiian Civic Clubs is trying to support their work out of Texas. Wow, awesome. So as you move up into this space, you get more grounded in your academia work and all of that. What we know you for is your work in research and data. What kind of led you to that? Like, why? Because I think originally you didn't go to school for that, correct?
Well, so I like school apparently, but I'm not in school for the first time in a long time, I feel like. So kind of to walk through like my educational path. So in Texas, I got my first degree in psychology, and then kind of had a crisis of, you know, again, like my parents were always like, you're gonna go to college. And then I was like, oh, what do I do after that? Right? Like, oh, go back to school. That's the easiest answer. So that's when I went back to school for nutrition and got a degree in clinical nutrition and became a dietitian. From there, I got another degree in what's called clinical research management. So like how you manage research studies and research protocols. And then my last degree, which I always continue to joke, I'm going to go get back to school, but it's going to be the last one, is in prevention science, which is very similar to public health. And so it is looking at our frameworks of how do we think about health. So also from a very developmental lens. So how does what we need to be healthy change over time over the course of the life course. So a lot of that work is looking at things. It's a framework where we look at risk and protective factors. So like if you experience these risk factors early on in life, you're potentially at a higher risk for a negative outcome later in life. Whereas if you have a protective factor, it can reduce that risk, right? So it looks at that framework over time. And so my PhD research was very much in food and looking at how we think and feel about our bodies and how that relates to what and how we eat. And I come from a place of loving food. Obviously, you know, food is something that we need and so incredibly important to our health. And I see so many people with so many disordered relationships with food. You know, there's so many things that we should do when it's related to food. And I really just want people to have more love for themselves and for food, right? We don't talk about that a lot, right? It's like, don't eat that, don't do that. And that was my practice as a dietitian. So that was my PhD training, and I met my mentor, Kaimi. Just she presented in our program and was talking about some of her work with the Native Hawaiian community. And I was like, hey, can I talk with you? I'd love to hear more about your work. And we met, and she offered me a postdoc when we met. And it was just kind of this like turn, but it was 2021, everything was changing.
Yeah.
We're all fondly remembering, COVID kind of changing a lot of our worlds. And Kaimi was like, hey, do you want to work with me? And interested in working more with the Native Hawaiian community. And I was like, I never thought that would be an option. I just never really thought, I never saw myself moving back to Hawaii. So it kind of was this perfect opportunity to use what I have learned growing up and think about that from a research standpoint and support the community doing research. And so then to in a long way, answer your question, hopefully it kind of just fell together. Kaimi introduced me to the amazing aunties at Kula and Papakolea, Auntie Adrian and Auntie Puni, who I am so thankful for.
Love them.
Absolutely. I have learned so much from them and the work that they have done for their community over so many years. And thinking about what does that look like? How do we use research and data to uplift the community and think about the strengths of the community being so incredibly important and doing it in a way that represents the community well. And so that was, really, really foundational opportunity that I never thought I would have. And so it just kind of like fell into it, I guess. I don't know.
Only 2021, like that's so crazy. It's only 2025. So only 2021.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot in
what has been built in the last 4 years is insane.
Yeah.
Wow, that's I'm still trying to. It's crazy that it's just 2021, and how much you've already done. Something that was super awesome that I had. So I do not have research. None of that background.
But you also have to stop discounting your background.
Well, I fell into this space because I'm in the hula space. I think that's what got me to gravitate to you folks with and with Kaimi, Dr. Kaimi, with Nicole, like just meeting with all of you folks, like was the importance of having community, because I think something that we don't recognize is how often we do a survey. As a Native Hawaiian person, we do surveys. People ask for surveys. They ask for our data, but they don't say it like that. They don't go, oh, can I have your data? They go, oh, we're having this survey. Can you finish the survey? It's only 5 minutes, right? And so I think something that we lose touch in is recognizing that that's our data. And I think that is something that our community really didn't have people teaching us about that part. Now we have a very, organizations like Papololokahi, right? Like Sherry Daniels, just reiterating the importance of our voice and being in those spaces. But here on the continent, it's a little bit harder to find those kinds of organizations to support our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community. And we are often asked for our data in the sense of like, oh, we're going to do this easy survey. And what our community fails to also know is that when we're giving this data, the people who are collecting the data are getting funding, lots and lots of dollars to be able to extract this information and then use them to their benefit. And some good, some bad, just depending on what direction. And I think that's what I appreciated. And so coming from a hula background, had to be put into this.
I was waiting where that came from.
Coming from my hula background, I had no idea that this, about what it was like to. And so I think that's something that I appreciate you bring to the community. Because even for just KALO, when we have our membership meetings, when we're having our mala, like having you communicate that and share that with the community. And I think on a broader scale with Nalima Kalapua, starting to bring you into that space has been super awesome, because now they're understanding like, oh, our data, that matters. And we don't have to give it to somebody else. We actually can be the ones to do it. And I think that's where I appreciate most about working with you is that you're always about teaching us how we need to show up in the space and how we can control our data. But most importantly, you show us how to have those conversations and how to make sure that the other people show up into the spaces understanding they have to respect this space. It's about community, it's about all of that. So like how do you like this that has to be something I mean that's a lot. That's a lot to carry. That's a lot. That's for lack of better words, I mean, it's a burden. It's a burden to have to carry, and always having to be the person in the room to remind people it's about the community first. Like, what is that? Like, how do you continue to do this work every day? And how can you, how do you carry that? It's a lot to carry, especially in this, like, just talking about Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
There's not very many who are not of our community, like, focusing on the benefits of the community. Maybe a big question.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, I don't want to
Um,
put any names or anything out. No.
I think, when you talk about that, it's also, I think about the many conversations that I've had, and it's such a privilege,
Mm,
to have community come to me and ask for something. So, yeah, it's a burden, but it's also, such a privilege to be asked and to be in that
mhm,
space. I think also, like, growing up, hard work was something that was very, like, celebrated in my family. So
mhm,
both my parents work really hard.
mm,
My mom owns her own business. My dad works more than probably anyone else that I know. And so that has definitely been ingrained in,
mm,
me and who I am. And so I think, that's something that I hold myself to a higher standard
mm,
in that. And so between those two things, right, having the privilege to be in this space, as well as, thinking about like how much more funding we can have, right? How do we tell the story is
mm,
another thing that you touched on, right? Like I think of it as how would I want my story told? And I would want to be a part of it.
mm,
And I'm not Native, right?
mm,
So what does that mean for a Native
mm,
community? The last thing I want to do is tell your story for you.
mhm,
So how do we talk about shifting the power so that you hold your story, you hold your data, right? That's what data
mhm,
is it tells a story.
mhm,
So I don't know that I have a good answer. I think the other thing to think of I think about often is why do I do
mhm,
things, right? Like in academia, there's definitely a push to publish and get your name and be the leading
mhm,
person in this area of research. And that's really not my style.
mhm,
I mean, I already said I'm terrified to be here today. Like,
mhm,
I'm not a very public person. I present because that's part of my role. I enjoy teaching. But when we talk about telling the story of a community, I'd much rather have somebody else do
mhm,
it. That's not my space. My space is to help support all the infrastructure, but how do we do the data in a way that makes sense, that can be justifiable to this Western world? I'm sorry, I
mhm.
probably didn't answer the question
You,
at all.
you, in my head, I was like, wow,
I don't
no.
know. Did
But
I?
in my head, I was like, yeah, that's her. That's her pushing us up over there to the microphone.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, again, that's what community, especially marginalized communities, right? Especially like our Pacific Islander community, something we know to be true is that we're proud people, but at the same time, like we're not gonna just step into the space. I think that comes with generational trauma and just the especially, and I think it's different too. It's different depending on where you're at. Like if I'm looking at just based here on the continent, and this could be true too for those in Hawaii, right? Is that we often don't know if what we have to share is means anything, right? Like you always make sure I credit myself and I mean in the beginning of this when COVID started and somebody invited me to speak at a panel, I laughed because I was like, I don't know what you guys want me to be on there, but sure, I'll come be on a panel. but it's those things of like teaching our community that it is important for us to be in those spaces, and that's why we have such a great, that's the partnership that we appreciate with Lexie, because you teach us, and I'm talking about Lexie in third
I know.
person, sorry.
It's okay. It's
It's
awkward.
about teaching us how to show up too. It's not just, it's about letting us know that we can tell our story and that our story does matter. And that's something that Pacific Islanders need to hear more often, because they're so hesitant um to step up to the plane. Slowly but surely, that wall is starting to shift, and you're starting to see more of the spaces being taken, which we need to start being in those places. And so that is something I really appreciate when we're working together to teach us. And I'm still like 2021, that's it. And then 2020, it's just crazy how much we've built in just 4 years. And that goes to show what great partnerships look like. Um,
Hold on,
so
can I
go
say
yeah.
something?
Oh no.
Well,
Oh
I just
no.
want it's not even bad.
Oh no.
It's
Yes.
it's also it's just recognizing that if you don't tell the story, someone else is going to tell it
Mm-hmm.
for you, right?
100%.
And you want your story to be told in the way. And I think, I didn't really explicitly say this, but a lot of my work is in health, right? So in health related work,
Mhm.
when we talk about the Native Hawaiian community, what do you hear? All of the deficits,
Yep.
right? Like all of the bad things
Mm-hmm.
that are happening to the Native Hawaiian community and all these horrible, higher rates of all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not just it,
Yep.
right? And then we also have to think about and make sure that we're talking about the social determinants of health, right? The underlying factors, the trauma that has occurred that affects health
Mm-hmm.
in a community,
Mm-hmm.
and not placing the blame on the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that is so common that we say, oh, well, that person needs to be
Mm-hmm.
healthier. And we don't take into account all of these other
The whole
pieces.
ecosystem of it being
Exactly.
healthy. Yep.
And I think if we keep having, no, let me say it this way, that we need more people like you sharing your stories and sharing your data and thinking about how data is being told
Mm-hmm.
to get a better understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that better understanding becomes better programs and ways to uplift and build on those strengths.
100%. Here in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like I've done before, I don't know if I'm going to say the names of the organizations or all that. We are a part of a program that was created to support Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. Um, let's say, you know what? I'll talk about hula. Let's talk about hula. So that's what I can talk about. So, we imagine a program being created to support education of hula and support the awareness of hula. And I think it's so important to understand that we need to tell our story, because I've been in spaces where other people are telling my story and the story is not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling the story of hula, and if we want to historically play this out, that's the reason for cultural appropriation, the romanticizing of Hawaii and the romanticizing of hula, is because we let somebody else tell the story. And not to like crush any of the Elvis fans, because my grandma's an Elvis fan, but the other day, one of my kids, I'm not gonna say their name because then that person will be like, I can't believe you said my name on there, and then now people are gonna know I was listening to Elvis Presley. So one of my children was listening to Blue Hawaii on the whatever, and I was in the middle of conversation. I had to stop and I had to be like, Alexa, stop playing this song. And I was like, why are we listening to this? Like, why are we like, do you know what this song did? Like, and I realized that people just they don't know, because somebody else told the story about Blue Hawaii and romanticized this whole idea about Hawaii. And that was when did he do that? I don't know. The 50s? Yeah, I
Sure.
don't have no idea. The 50s. And now today, you have a new generation listening to the song thinking that's what it is. And you're like, no, and above, and also you're a hula person, so like no better. But you know what I mean? Like it's the same thing. And that's what's happening here in Oregon. Like the spaces that are supposed to be supporting Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander people, or organizations or programs or whatever, the people not telling the stories are other people who are not of the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, and they're the ones getting their programs going, and and that's how the narrative changes, because we don't have the people. So yeah, it's a kahea. It's a kahea to everybody. To You have to show up to the space and tell your story. If not, somebody else tells your story, and it's happening too many times. So I
And so
go ahead.
that's well, so similarly, when we talk about kind of the research that I tend to do or participate in, it's what we call CBPR, so community-based participatory research. And I know you've heard this term before, but it's really thinking about how we start from community, and community owning the whole process and being a part of the whole process, right? So like with the mala, right? That was KALO's idea, right? That this is how we support the community on the continent, rather than the traditional research approach is, oh, I have this great idea. Okay, the Native Hawaiian community has a higher rates of diabetes. I'm going to tell them to eat X, Y, and Z, right? And it's because I know nutrition, so I should teach you. And so it really flips the script or the narrative on how we solve problems.
Yep.
And so coming from the true knowledge of the community, uplifting that rather than taking something away is kind of the approach that I think is really helpful, and starting to be more recognized as a beneficial way to move forward in health and really make health work, right? Because I mean, I know as a dietitian that I can tell anyone to eat more vegetables and they're not going to do it, right? Like, I mean, I don't like fruit, right? I don't like fruit. Telling me to eat more fruit isn't going to help me eat more fruit, right? So thinking about it, we have to be better when we talk about public health and health strategies and uplifting community that has had some really awful things happen, really awful things. Like, how do we make it at least a little bit right?
And not just community. I mean, it's also like being able to look at it through an Indigenous lens.
Correct.
And being able to uplift the practices that our ancestors did for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years prior to this, and bringing in that holistic, like, pilina, the connection.
And when we look at, Western models of health, it's all deficit based, right?
Yep.
It's like, what's wrong? So then how do we measure it in a way that can justify? And I think that's really hard. I think that's something that the health system struggles with, right? You go to your doctor, you get a diagnosis. You don't get
all the things that's wrong with you yet,
right? You don't get the things that are like, oh, you're doing these great things that are protective for your health. All we talk about is how we treat something that's wrong, right? So how do we move that to more promotion and that indigenous lens of knowing and being, rather than like, what's wrong with you?
We've already touched on this. We've built on community and the importance of telling our mo'olelo, our stories, the importance of being able to be the people to tell those stories, and how your partnership works, and the privilege that you have, the privilege that you share with being able. And I think we also want to recognize that it's also a privilege to work with you, like to have that expertise that you can share with us. What can you provide to other people, or other people who are in this space of, like, who have the knowledge of how to do research and data, or just how to basically what you're doing? Like, how can you help guide? Like, what would be your advice to someone who's trying to approach a community?
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking about this a couple days ago too. Of I think the first thing is building trust, right? And so I think with that, it's not what am I going to give, it's what does the community need, and just being there, right? Like, coming back to the mala,
Mm-hmm.
going to the mala just to go to the mala and be
Yep.
part of it, right? And volunteering and being a part. But like, I think there's, I don't know. I don't want to just like, you don't barge in and be like, here, look at, I know all these
Yeah.
things, right? Like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. You definitely showed up, and I think gosh, what it was, months before we started to build, you just became you were a member,
Yeah.
you were at the mala, and then yeah, building all of that.
And I think, the other piece of it is like, again, being asked.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask.
Yeah.
I see so many researchers that go in and are like, I want to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is my priority. I want to learn this. And that doesn't really, what's in it for as a community member? What do you say to that? Like, good
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting
Sometimes, I
is,
don't know.
something that I recognize is that when it comes to like health systems in the counties or in the state, they go on our website, they find the email that has to get emailed to, and I will immediately get an email saying, "Oh, hey, Lay, da da da," or whatever. We're doing this survey. We're gonna give your community $10. Da 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 da. We want to do this. Can we just? And I have no idea who these people are. I have no idea what this organization is for. And so, side note, I don't respond to those people
Mm-hmm.
because I learned how research and data should show up in this space. So I actually don't respond to them. And it's been unfortunate because we do have somewhere like it's been organizations of color sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we show up. No, I don't say we. I mean, I think they show up because that's how people have showed up for them. And so it's been hard to see, but it's always so disheartening, especially when it's like one of the counties that we're working in, or even the state, when the first thing the agency asks, they don't even, I don't even know this, like we haven't even had a handshake, and all they want is like, can you get your community together, can you share this survey, and then whoever we do, we're going to give them $10. And I'm like, and it's kind of it's really like, it's so disheartening to be like, that's all they're valued. They're just $10. Your story is worth $10. And I saw something else that they shouldn't do is don't show up to community space in that way. So that is something we've really appreciated. And so like, just like with the mala, you know, um, I think that relationship we've built to get our members to trust what we're doing, as for what we're collecting and why we're collecting it, and getting the story, and also um empowering the students of our community, to go out and be part of, you go and talk story, and like see the value and the importance of needing to have you gather this information
Mm-hmm.
and have that relationship. And I think that has been so appreciative. So thank you for teaching us that.
Well, I hope it also is something that the community values of like, oh, I can see what happens to my results, like why I did this. Like, I hope that's something that's powerful to see. I mean, I know, so like, I was asked to be in a longitudinal, so long-term study,
Mhm.
through my insurance provider. And I joined and I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to get any of this back. Like, am
Yeah.
I ever going to see this data
Hmm.
back? And I mean, I was willing to do it, because it was related to cancer, and I'm often willing because I ask people to do research, so
Hmm.
I'll do it. But I'm like, I wonder what they're doing. Like, are they
Hmm.
reporting back to the community? And that's not really built into our system. Like, there's no requirement
Hmm.
within research or data
Hmm.
to give back to the community.
Hmm.
And you were touching on, public health departments. I think they have a really hard job,
Oh yeah.
right? Because they need to identify the priorities of health in
Yep.
communities, and they need the stories and the data of the community.
Hmm.
However, it is $10 is not enough, right?
Hmm.
And then also it feels like this like very cursory understanding,
Hmm.
right? Like, okay, so this is a problem in this community, but not really knowing that,
Hmm.
well and fully. And I mean, I think they're totally underfunded and understaffed, and even more
100%.
so now, that's going to become a huge problem. But I think, how do we then rely on and respect and support community organizations to know their communities and trust them in doing the work that's for the best of the community. And that public health systems don't do a really great job of either, right? Like we don't trust, like we ask for 1 million reports or we don't give them money up front or whatever it might look like too. So that's a huge challenge.
And there's another thing that I appreciate. I mean, learning from you about important to make sure that the data gets back to the community, because I never thought of that. Even when I did evaluations, I never thought like, oh, do I get to see what did you folks come up with? And it wasn't until when I went back to school, I don't know why I did that either. But when I went back and started to take my research and to take those classes, and I was just like, wow, I never thought of research and I never saw it that way, right? Like, so it's really awesome, working with you, that for us at KALO, we have made it a priority to make sure that none of it goes out until our community gets to see it first. None of it goes out until we have the ability to put something together and present it to the community that they can have and that they can hear and that they can see and that they can, and so I think it's really important. I didn't know the value in it before, but I do now. And so even with our Pico to Pico report, maybe it went out to all of our membership, but over a handful of people have already, have commented, they've come to us, or just seeing them and talking story with them. And just for them to be like, wow, I just never thought, to see, when you see it that way, the importance and the value of that's our story. Like the Pico to Pico report is the story of the families living in the diaspora. And unless we tell a story, somebody else has been telling that story. Somebody else has been telling the story about people living in the diaspora, and this is finally a way where they are telling their own story. And so that is so important. So, we definitely appreciate that. And I think for the rest of our community who's listening, you need to, I think you should be able to demand that and request. And the expectation should be that you control the narrative, and not be afraid of saying that we can control the narrative. So awesome.
And I think with that too, though, like I think there's an important part of learning, right? Like I think as I was thinking about today and talking with you of like, what am I going to kick myself for 2 years from now, right? Like I look at things that I've done 2 years ago and I'm like, oh, I could have said that so much better. Or, I wish I knew this then. And I think that that's so important when we're working with community, is that acknowledging that we're still learning and this is still a very new process. And maybe, 2 years from now, it's like, oh, we thought we were so good that we were reporting back to community, once a year, and we need to do something better or whatever it might be. And I think that, particularly in academia or in researchers don't do that, right? Like there's this like, oh, I know how to do this. I already got this, right? That attitude is often common and something that you're kind of trained in, right? When you go to a PhD program, you're trained to think and feel like you're smart, and know all of these things. And so I think that we need to really make sure that we are having equal power in relationships to be called out when maybe you make a mistake, right? Like the work that I do with Kula and the aunties, Auntie Adrian and Auntie Puni, I'm terrified, right? They are such wealth of knowledge that I'm terrified that I'm going to do something wrong, or that I am not going to represent the community in the way that they want. And so, right, that relationship is really important, I think, to me as a researcher, that they come to me and they ask for something, I do it, and they're like, nope, that needs to be done better. And then I learn through that process. So
I think the conversations that happen a lot is, us being from Hawaii and then having to navigate like, oh, are you Hawaiian or are you non-Hawaiian? Are you Native Hawaiian? You're not this Hawaiian? Are you Hawaiian by heart? All of these different things, right? Of like being Hawaiian. But I think in the space of this work, I think just elevating to that we're from Hawaii and there's a culture that exists in all of us. There's a culture, and I think I'm gonna use this saying all the time, Sophia, on our last podcast. she said something that just sat with me, was that, we give back to the community that raised us. And I think I lean on that when I ask, when I go into this question, is like, we need more people who carry the values and the aloha that we are instilled in Hawaii, growing up in Hawaii, whether you're Hawaiian or not Hawaiian. We need them to be part of this work. We need them to step into these spaces of making space and taking space for our community, the community that raised them. So as someone who doesn't have, KOKO, who's not Native Hawaiian, but from Hawaii, was raised with that aloha, was raised in the air of Hawaii. Like, what is your advice to the next generation, or people who are on the cusp of like, should I go into this work? Do I belong in this work?
And it's such a hard question to answer. I mean, I think, well, first of all, know you're going to do something wrong and be okay with that, right? Like,
That you're human.
you're human, and yeah. Hold your values, right? Like, I think about that a lot of, what are the values that I was raised in back home. And it's all, just even the little things, right? Like making sure everyone cleans up before you go, right? And you are there till everything is cleaned up, whatever it might be. So remembering those values being incredibly important. And then I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is know why you're doing the work that you're doing, right? Like, are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it for the community? And truly being able to answer that, right? Like, are you doing it to uplift your own career and your own name, or are you doing it for the community? And because, I mean, like, the mala speaks to me. Like, there's just something that is so incredibly amazing to be able to grow such an important food, and it's more than a food, away from home, as an opportunity to come together. I mean, I think about all of the people that I've gotten to meet, all the conversations, all of the, oh, I did this, or did you ever go to this place, right? Like, all of that is just so, it means so much to me. And that's why the mala is so important in the work that I do with Piko to Piko. Not to get a publication or more money for myself or whatever it might be. And so I think, if someone's a researcher with training that wants to be in this space, it's like, well, why are you here? What do you want to gain out of it? And is it, for your own self or for the community? And how do you continue to think about that and keep that in balance? Again, because like our structures don't really support that, right? Like, our structures are aimed to say, in academia, the more publications that you get, the more grants you get, the more and more and more, right? That cumulative advantage that grows, that's kind of hard to reconcile with, right? You get caught up in it, or I don't know. That's all I can think. I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice, is why are you in the space that you're in, and really thinking about, does it hold to your values, what you grew up with, what your culture taught you?
I think sometimes we got to be serious about research and data. Like, I think this podcast, the purpose of, like, when Jade and I were talking about it, I was like, we gotta have, like, creating a conversation of like, yeah, non-Hawaiians are part of this work. And like, also, I think we also have to create that conversation of like how you show up in this work as a non-Hawaiian or non-Pacific Islander, especially living on the continent. We don't have, we we just celebrated the first Pacific Islander faculty of all seven public school, like, the for a public school that's gonna be like a of the school faculty, not somebody they brought in to help with the program, but like a sanctioned faculty for the position. You know what I mean? Out of the seven schools, we only have three of them that have like Pacific Islander um knowledge, like Pacific Islander experts per se, that are there trying to uplift. So there's not a lot of spaces that we really take up space. And in the state of Oregon, um a lot of people speak for our Pacific Islander communities. So I think, yeah, it's serious. Most of the time we're always really laughing. Piko to Piko's fun.
Yeah.
The mala is fun, but we also have to have that serious conversation of like we gotta show up and um and then we also have to have the conversation. I think the biggest thing too for our Pacific Islander communities is that we also have to appreciate the people who are non-Pacific Islanders showing up for us. And I think we also have to recognize that we too have a privilege of working with their, they could choose not to, and then we don't have that expertise. We as a community fall short of having knowledge about this because we want to have those spaces like, oh, it's just ours. But the reality is like, even like, and I always lean back onto this. If we look at our ali'i, our we evolved. Our ali'i believed in evolution. They didn't believe in watering down our culture by any means, but they did believe that culture can evolve. And I think this is a great segue into having those, like, it's okay for culture to evolve, and it's okay for culture to evolve here on the continent. We're not, it's not less than, it's not more than, it's just is. And our LEE already created that pathway for us. So it is a very serious conversation. We appreciate it, but if you guys hang out with us at Pico to Pico, we're actually really funny and fun. And we have a great time, and the mala really does center all of that. So mahalo, Lexie, for being with us
Thank
today
you.
here, and mahalo to all of you for joining us again at KALO HCC's KOKO podcast here at Aloha Community Resource Center, and we will see you next time.